Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the XPAND podcast. This is your host, Shereen Beatty, and I'm here in Boise, Idaho, with Shereen Yusuff.
Hello.
This is a very beautiful, very wonderful episode. We have Jacob Butcher in here, Marisa Zamudio, Jose Garcia, Shyla Ray, Steve. I actually don't know your last name. Steve Moses here. This is post Wim Hof Method Workshop in Boise. Mm-hmm. And this is our first live podcast with an audience, and there will be discussion at some point. People will have an opportunity to share their experience today and even ask questions. So just to begin this whole freaking process here, today was one of the most profound experiences of my life. You held so much ground. You held so much space, vulnerable comfort. When you would explain everything, the process of you being vulnerable with your story, put down a remarkable platform to build community and trust like you were intending to do. From there, you explained the method in its physiological form, its experiential form, with the breathing and the cold exposure profoundly well. I am well versed in the background, and I still learn stuff from what you were explaining. And that to me holds a lot of value because it shows you really know what you're doing, and that you've been doing dozens of these the past few years. And your wisdom, your experience really showed up and presented itself today for 7 straight hours. It was beautiful, and everybody freaking felt it. And the community here is so freaking unbelievable. And you're now a part of that.
Oh, yes, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Everybody had an unbelievable time today. And there's so many different components that build that. And you were a major part of that.
Thank you, Shereen. I appreciate it.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for all of this. Thank you all for freaking being here right now. This is so freaking cool. We had dinner today, and it was one of the most beautiful moments of my life. Real freaking community. Bridging beauty into planet Earth through discovery and facing the freaking boundaries together, collectively, community.
Correct. Yeah.
Whew, how was your day? How was it for you?
Well, first of all, it's my first time in Boise, as I've been saying a couple of times already, and I think I was so overwhelmed with the love and the energy and just how open everyone was and how everybody was willing to share. Every time we had breaks, people were coming up to me talking about different things. I really appreciated how vulnerable people were, and it wasn't difficult, It almost seemed like people walked in ready to receive, which was very powerful for me as well. Because as an instructor, you are always on the receiving end of energy that you're not aware of. You don't know what you're going to face. You don't know what the day is going to be like, especially me when I don't have an agenda, right? I never have an agenda. And I just go with the flow. And there were a bunch of things I did today that I've never done in any other workshop. And I really did it because the energy in the room was so vibrant. I was making things on the fly. I think you guys experienced it as well, because I was changing the things as and when people asked me questions, I was saying, oh yeah, that's a great idea, let's do that as well, So the energy in the room was conducive for me to behave that way.
That kind of approach shows a lot in a coach or a provider of space to feel what's going on. And I was explaining this at dinner, to explain something differently to each person so there's a planted seed for that person. You can't just say the same construct to 100 people and expect every single person to get that. So for you to really feel the vibe and the flow and the genuine readiness and
Yeah.
to go with that, that helped build the experience for the collective.
Yes.
If you had just this set regimen on what to expect, in my personal opinion, that may very well leave out very important experiential aspects for everybody to freaking experience as a whole.
Agreed.
It's that's actually I resonate so well with the aspect of no agenda.
Yeah.
Just be in the moment. The moment shows everything we need.
Yes, so on that note, I'll give you an example of some feedback I got at the end of the workshop. So one person actually walked up to me and said, Shereen, I was very uneasy when you said that there was no agenda. I am so regimented and I need a schedule. I need to know what we're doing, when I can eat, when are we going to go into the ice bath, when are we breathing. And every time, she approached me twice, actually. And, it was interesting because I was really telling her the truth. I really did not have an agenda. I didn't know. I had a basic idea of when things would be. But I noticed the first time there was a slight uneasiness in her. But then the second time, it was kind of like she just let go. And at the end of the workshop, she actually said that she was grateful that she actually realized, even though she walked in with what she thought was an open mind, that she realized she could leave it even more open, because until I said I have no agenda, she didn't realize the level of discomfort that created in her, So that was so cool for me, because I've said this every single workshop, but every single time I do it, I get a mixture of responses, Some people laugh, some people think I'm joking. Some people think, no, she has an agenda. She's just saying this to make us uneasy. Reality is I really don't. Because I cannot. It's not possible for me to know what needs to come next, because it really goes with the flow. When people ask questions, then based on the questions, I decide to change the route, That's just how I've always been. So.
Well, plant medicine, meditation, and the cold kind of help people realize, I believe, that no agenda, the agenda is presence.
Yes.
And to feel.
True.
And to flow. And that our mind can play tricks on us, just like you very well showed earlier.
Yeah.
With the freaking rotational hand thing. Yeah. That freaking blew me away. It's like, what? My hand went precisely where I envisioned it would be the second time.
Yeah.
It's just like, how?
How? Your mind's always playing tricks on you. Mind's always telling you what you can do, what you cannot do. The more you have the mind-body alignment, the more the mind and the body talk to each other, the more you're able to do. More you're able to understand what your boundaries are, how far you can surpass them without injuring yourself. It's very important.
How many workshops have you held now?
It's a great question. Actually, it's funny you ask me this, because till last week I wouldn't have known this answer. I'm planning to do workshops in Oman and India. And in order for me to get the visa to actually go and do workshops there, I had to come up with a number. So I'm at 24 at the moment. And 24 official workshops. So I do classes every Sunday in Houston. It's my favorite, from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. I do classes where people who have done the workshops come back to do classes with me. And I joke saying that my poor people who come to my classes have to go through the journey that I went through the previous week. Because I put a playlist based on the feelings that I have. And so whatever journey that I went through that entire week, they go through it. So I have one tomorrow. I'm very excited. I've got an incredible playlist put together for them. But yeah, it's interesting, I admit that I cannot believe how many I've done so far. I've just been going. And numerous times I have asked myself, Shereen, how much are you doing? You need to take care of yourself. But then I would ask, is that my body saying that? Or is my mind saying that? Is my mind pulling me back? Or is my body telling me that I've had enough? And every single time I have asked that question, I've realized that my body wants to do more. It's my mind that's pulling me back, So the Wim Hof method has humbled me too. I always say this in my workshops, I am learning with you. The more I teach, the more I learn from you. You guys are teaching me as well of how to be and how to be present in the moment. And all the stories that I hear, all the feedback that I gain, even this afternoon on the way to dinner, Marissa and I were talking about her experience in the workshop. And she was giving me feedback and about things I didn't even think about, and then she was telling me about how when she does her practice, she always does the breath and then she goes into the ice immediately. And I told her, actually, it's not a joint practice. It can be done independently. You can do the breath without the ice, you can do the ice without the breath, So it was interesting when she said that, I realized, wow, I should probably say that. They are individual pillars. You can do them together. When you do the breath, yes, you do activate the periaqueductal gray area, which is what helps with handling the pain when you go into the ice. But the more you do it, as Wim says, when you have the mindset, you don't need anything. You're already there. So when you go into the ice, you don't need the breath. You don't need anything. You're already there. I love these moments of silence with Shereen.
Just to touch base on the soundtrack that you provided.
Yes, that was Wim singing in the song, and
Yeah.
beautiful. It's just so, his voice is so powerful. I love listening to him, even when he's live. He plays his guitar. He's so free in the way he expresses himself through his music. And now he has started writing poetry. So hopefully we'll get to read his poems. He read a couple of his poems at San Jose, which was very, very beautiful. But yeah, he's definitely a very charming man, in the way he expresses himself through music, the way he sings. And that song, that's why I love that song so much. Because for me, it's like Wim is there. He's singing to us.
You could feel his presence.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
The dude that helped really bring this into the modern era.
Absolutely.
In an unbelievably efficient way.
Yeah.
His vibe, his presence through all of the world records, through all of the freaking aspects of his retinas freezing.
Yeah.
Like all that wisdom built inside of that body is being shown and expressed through his vocal ability.
Sure. And his love.
And his love.
And his love.
And his presence.
Yeah.
The dude's so freaking kind.
Yes.
I met him just a couple of times, just very, very briefly, but unbelievable people walk this freaking planet. Like, holy shit. And they can share and they can provide some freaking perspective and insight in a way that it's distilled, like we were talking about earlier, for you to share it substantially well.
Yes. Yes, I said this to Wim as well, that I think what Wim gave us was the union of the East and the West. Because, I've spent most of my life in the East. When I say East, I mean India and Oman. Today in the workshop, somebody asked me if I was talking about New York. But anyway. I think being in the East, I actually wrote a blog about this, but the name of the blog is When East Meets West. Spending most of my life in the East, it has made me realize that in the East, there's a lot of emphasis on feeling. And in the West, there is a lot of emphasis on understanding, right? So in the East, there are gurus and swamis and a lot of people who have disciples and students, and we're constantly learning from the teachers. And there are many teachers, but there's a lot of emphasis on the amount of time you've done something. You need to do something for a prolonged period of time to understand and to feel, because you understand through feeling, right? And you come to the West, it's all about, tell me what book to read. Where can I go to find this information? Who do I listen, or which podcast do I listen to? There's a lot of emphasis on knowledge. And I don't think either one is correct. I think the way is right in the middle. It is important to understand through feeling. So it's important to feel, which is why in the workshop, if you noticed, most of the time I wanted you all to feel first. And then I explained what was it that we were doing and why was it that we felt what we did. So it is important to have both, because if you don't have both, then you cannot go deep. Sometimes if you're just trying to feel, then you don't understand your feelings, and then it can result in fear. This is why it is really important sometimes to have an instructor or a teacher or a coach, however you want to call it. Because when you have feelings that you do not understand, you want to be able to discuss it with a teacher, with a coach, right? And when the coach or the teacher explains it to you, not in terms of gaining more experience and gaining more sensations, but really breaks it down to you in a more physiological, scientific standpoint, then you know, I understand what's going on within me. I want to explore this more. It comes from within because you're understanding yourself from within, right? So I think it is important to have both. And I think that's what Wim did. Wim brought both together. That's what makes the Wim Hof method so powerful. Because if you go to the East, there are many methods. Wim Hof method is not a radical, oh my God, no one's ever talked about breath before. No one's ever talked about the ice before. These things have been around for centuries, you know. But again, there is always this concept of, oh, I need to go into the forest for 20 years. Or if I really want to understand what meditation means, I need to go and do at least a 10-day retreat. Here we have something that we can do in our own houses, in our beds, for about 15-20 minutes in the morning. Almost everybody I know who has done this method has felt something the first day. They didn't even have to wait for a week. And so I believe that our generation is going to be the first generation that we understand what knowing oneself means while being in our own house, without having the need to travel, without having the need to go to forests, without having the need to do any of the things which we have in the past believed we have had to do. We will be the first generation to be able to do it in our houses, in our own beds, having normal jobs, not having to do anything radical. We will have the ability to be going to work, working with people around us, and recognizing what it means to be happy, healthy, and strong.
At profound scale, people all around the world, with the internet, with the modern era of communication, with our ability to freaking travel in a plane and have you hold 24 workshops and plant these fucking portals and these seeds and these places for people to learn together at a substantial rate to bring back into their home. That is so fucking unbelievable.
It is. It makes me excited, actually. I just get so excited to think about where we are going, you know, the future of what the world is going to look like. Makes me feel very excited.
We all play a part in that.
Yes.
Fuck.
True. Oh no, the burden.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, it is.
Because, everybody's growth helps the growth of other people. Just like what happened in the freaking breathing exercise.
That's so true.
The intensity of everybody built a greater intensity, a greater purpose, a greater sense of connection. That's what happens when we all do this internal work for the fucking betterment of other people. Because we discover more stuff about who we are that naturally, organically blossoms into our relationships, to our behavior, to living as the examples that we have become and are becoming. Thus, therefore, blossoming that potential even further out at maybe a slower pace, but a pace that's worth fucking paying attention to.
Sure.
Because nature rolls with its own way.
Yeah. You made a very good point, you know. In many ways, we live in very amazing times because of the ability for us to access the internet, to be able to gain information on the internet. Everything that we're doing, this podcast, the video that we made, all of the stuff that we put on social media, it gives people more access to understanding what they would like to understand more about. I say this because of the feedback I have received over and over from the people who have come to my workshops, that if you are intrigued by the Wim Hof method, I highly implore you to try a workshop, right? Because no level of internet can really help you understand what it means to be a part of a tribe, a part of the community. Because, you know, it's interesting, we were talking about it the other day, but we say that the 3 pillars of the Wim Hof method is the breath, the gradual exposure to cold, and the mindset. And there really should be a fourth pillar, and it should be connection or love, you know. And I was talking to Marissa about this, where, you know, when you say the word love, it means so many different things to so many different people, you know, because everybody has experienced love in a way that is different from everybody else. Like I said in the workshop, just because I read Oliver Twist doesn't mean that I know what it's like to be an orphan. I believe this was a saying in that in one of my favorite movies, Good Will Hunting, and I loved it. I loved that line so much because it's so true. So exactly in that sense, there is so much you can gain from the internet, but one of the things you don't gain is the feeling of being a part of a tribe. And the other part is when you don't know how far you can go, or you don't understand how deep you can go. And so I use these words far and deep because it means different things for different people as well, right? So I have noticed a lot of people who have come to me and have said, you know, I really wished I had done a workshop sooner. You know, I had done the video course, had done all of this stuff, and that's amazing. It's amazing to do stuff that's on the internet. It's amazing to do all of the stuff that we get online. But there is something called human contact, which makes a completely, it adds so much value to the experience, which once you're able to get to that level, I always say, Wim Hof Method at the end of the day is a tool to help you be in a state of mind that you can be without anything. It is the recognition of the state that the Wim Hof Method helps you to get to, the level of awareness that we gain through various methods. The Wim Hof Method is a very powerful way for people who have never meditated in their lives. Even the people who had no clue what meditation is, they've come to me and they've had incredibly profound experiences. That's why I love the Wim Hof Method so much.
1400%. So I've been doing the practice for 5-6 years or so, and that was one of the most profound experiences of my life. No other even group activity practice even compared to what happened today, under the setting of an actual workshop with a person who, you know, works personally with Wim Hof. It just brings it to a whole different dimension. And for me, it can be related to working with proper healers with plant medicine, going down to Peru with people who are like deeply well attuned to the practice. It's so beyond recognition. And we can try to convince ourselves that we're ready for a moment like that, or to coach other people or whatever, but there's just so many different degrees to freaking everything. That's what's so humbling for me on any path. Yeah. And it's also so beautiful because it offers so much more ability to become humble, just like the person you were talking about earlier, thinking that they showed up with an open mind, but the process and who you were showed otherwise to her in her own journey. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Zarin.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for helping me set this up. You know how crazy, I know I told a couple of you the story, but really the only reason this workshop happened, was because he happened to release the podcast that we did 5 months ago on a day that I canceled a workshop with another location. And when I listened to his podcast, I thought, because he started it off saying, you know, one day we'll bring her here, or something to that effect, that one day she will come here to do a workshop. And I thought, well, why wait? You know, just do it. That's what Wim always says, you know, why wait? Just do it. Why do you think so much? And so I was listening to the podcast and I thought, you know, I will call Zarin. I'll let him know that I have this date ready or available. And if he's available, then okay. If not, it's okay, you know. And he just jumped at it. Really, that's how it happened. It was pretty amazing, actually, because I am completely booked till the end of the year. I don't have a single weekend free. And it was just amazing that the one weekend, and the weather was beautiful. I mean, we even had a hailstorm today. Like Wim came even through the hail, you know, and it was amazing. I was so happy to see that we had a hailstorm. And then when it was time for the ice bath, the sun was out, you know. It was a very special workshop for me. I did a lot of things at this workshop that I did with the people who became instructors with me when we were in Norway or Poland together, you know, where we held hands and we walked out, or when we did the ice train, you know. We did all of those things with Wim, and it was very special for me to be able to relive all those moments again, you know. So thank you all.
Thank you with so much believable gratitude. It's so beautiful to consider how each person was remarkably crucial in producing the collective experience today. And each person, to the depth of where they are in their journey of struggle and triumph and love and confusion, wherever we may be, that builds that freaking ability to bond. And one of the most beautiful recognitions that I've had during the Aubrey Marcus mastermind group is we realized at our meetup in Sedona that being in this group is learning how to hold and be held at the same time.
Wow.
Because it's so easy for many people just to love other people, but to be loved in return is a profoundly challenging thing at times.
Probably harder, actually. Yeah.
So to feel the people coming together and loving other people and being loved in return, it's just this unbelievable flow that's undeniable. It builds and it flows through each freaking person. It truly felt like we were bonded with something beyond today, especially during the breathing. My God.
My job here is done.
For real. When you came over, I said, thank you for showing up. Like, thank you for providing, and not just showing up physically, but like showing up with fucking presentation and allowing the method to be properly shared. So blasted deeply inward and outward. I was sharing earlier that it seems like the deeper we go inward, the deeper the further we're able to go outward. And you just shared that a few moments ago.
Yeah.
It's so real. It's so real. And something in Eastern tradition where, talking about Dahara, is that they believed that the deeper you're able to ground in the middle of your centered gravitational alignment between earth and heaven, the further you're able to travel through your consciousness. And it's so profound when that can be related to deep plant medicine shamanic work. Think about how grounded these people probably are deep within their breath, deep within their body, to produce this freaking environment that is so full of protection, so beyond. And that can be shared and replicated in many different scenarios. We've kind of discussed Wim as a shaman in a sense.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You know,
breath shaman. That's his name, breath shaman.
It's just, it's beautiful to meet people along those lines who are bringing real love and good.
Exactly. I think, Wim has, I think what I really admire about Wim is he has not changed since the day this has begun, in terms of, when I say he has not changed, I mean in his outlook, in how he looks on the surface. He still comes on stage with his shorts and shirt, and then he walks barefoot, talks the same way, cusses 2 words every sentence, and he's the same. It doesn't matter if he's with Joe Rogan or he's with Jim Carrey or any of these people. He's exactly the same. He's the same person with me that he is with somebody else. And I think that is so cool. I think when you meet people like him who, again, 26 world records is not a joke, you know. And like I said, I think now it's 25 because somebody broke one of his world records. But 25 world records is not a joke. And most people spend their entire lifetime trying to get one, you know. So for such a man to be so humble, to be able to hug you like you're the only person who's existing in front of him when he talks to you, it's very special. People like him exist, and I'm meeting them more and more every day. I think this is what I love most about the work is you meet such beautiful people everywhere, and the more you get into this work, the more you recognize them, the more they come into your life. And it's just such an enjoyable ride. I was telling Steve today, I don't really want to be anywhere else right now. You know, I'm very happy where I'm at, doing what I'm doing. You know, there's nowhere I have to be, nowhere I have to go. I'm just enjoying the ride, you know.
To transition, thank you.
Thank you
so much, for real. You're beautiful. Everybody here is freaking beautiful. Does anybody feel compelled to share, to provide input for discussion, to ask questions? The floor has been opened for everybody here, and it is beyond welcome.
Everyone's like Marissa, straight up.
I know, I'm like, what? I honestly don't know what to share right now. Just anything?
Anything you want.
I don't understand why people... Okay. You want to go, Jose?
Sure.
Okay.
This is going to be kind of a diatribe. Oh, sorry. This is going to be kind of a diatribe. So I think it's interesting because you keep mentioning Wim as, not just here, but you mentioned it during the workshop. You kept mentioning Wim as like pure love and you running into other people that are love. And you mentioned only once where I think what you said was you believe that you were chosen as an instructor because you can also provide love. But like from all the conversations that we've had, everything that Darren has said, I don't think it's been put out enough that like you are also bringing that. So I have to tell you again, this is, like I said, a diatribe. It was really interesting. We went through probably like an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. And then we had our first break. And you told everybody, hey, make sure you talk to people you don't know. You're going to need to know their names because I'm going to punish you later if you don't, right? And as people were walking around, there was this very, I actually went back and I sat down. I stopped mingling because I needed to stretch my hips out. So I sat down and I was stretching my hips and I looked up and you were dancing, but it wasn't a look at me dancing. It was just like, oh, there's music on. I'm going to start dancing. And it was it was a thing for you. You weren't dancing for anyone else. So you were dancing for yourself. That I don't know that anyone noticed or cared because everyone was just kind of getting out of your way or moving. They're like, oh, I'm going to walk here. So they kind of went around you and no one stopped to look at you that I saw except me. I was like sitting there and watching you. I was like, I hope she doesn't open her eyes because she's going to find me just staring at her dancing. And so I watched you dance for about 4 minutes. And I was like, man, that's super cool. Like she doesn't, my first thought was like, man, I hope one day I could not give a shit about anything like that and just dance, right? And so I'm sitting there and stretching my hips and you're just dancing and, doing your thing. And that was the first thing that popped up. I was like, oh man, that's really cool. And then we went back and then we had another break. We talked and you shared some stories. And as time went on, I was like, oh my God, this is I want to be around this all the time. I want to be around this person all the time. I found this immediate attraction to you, and it's not necessarily in a sexual way, but it was just this thing where I'm like, man, this is what it's like to be around a good person. So, and more things came up, right? You danced more and you went from the mats, but it was just you dancing for yourself because you're like, I feel like dancing. Anyway, so I wanted to say thank you for bringing that and then just being love, because there was a lot of things that you had mentioned that resonated with me. You had mentioned about your parents saying if you don't, act a certain way, these things can happen. And I had a similar experience growing up. And I was like, oh, it's kind of crazy. Like, that's really weird. And you talk about like the trauma and how you don't think about that, and these things come up. Anyhow, the whole idea was like, once I realized like, oh, this is like the kind of feeling that I want to be around all the time. I realized that I don't know that anybody was giving you enough credit that you're bringing that same type of love around as well. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
I have something to say.
Okay.
No. To go off of that.
Oh wait, I'm not done.
No, Jose.
I'm actually not done. So sorry. There was.
This is live.
Yes, I was like, wait, I know I forgot
Live
something.
audience, guys.
Actually, don't take offense to that.
Yeah, thank you. Well, because I've been trying to figure out a way, like formulate, and actually Steve and I were talking about this earlier. I've been analyzing, like, how do I convey this message? How do I tell you this without being like, I love you, like, because that's not what I was trying to convey.
But you can.
Thank you. Yeah, and that was the thing.
totally
I think what kind of like sealed everything was once we were done breathing, people were getting up, walking into that room. And it's probably just my face, but as I was walking by, you were with Steve, and I was like, oh, I need to be quiet because I'm going to like walk by. And you stood up and you looked at me and you said, are you okay? And I just looked at you and I was like, yeah. And I remember giving you a hug, and I was like, man, that's like a really good hug. It was just like a really, again, that's another moment when I was like, oh, this is what I want to be around all the time. Just someone who's like providing this to the world. So again, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much.
Now I'm done.
For sharing that. That was very very touching. I'm very touched that you shared.
It was
that.
what you did, so
Yeah,
thank you.
no. And actually, so I danced today because I was very happy. I was really, really very happy, and I express through dance. So I laugh loud and I'm very happy. But dance is really when I feel happiness to such a degree that nothing I can say or do can express it the way dance does. So you're right. Today I was in a very, very good mood. Just the energy, just everybody, the way they were, and the way the workshop was going, just how everybody was responding. I was feeling very, very happy. So thank you. Thank you for saying that.
Thank you.
No, it's interesting you say that I was dancing for me, because this is not the first time I'm hearing it. A lot of my friends have made that comment that, Shereen, when you dance and we look at you, we know you're not dancing for anybody else. You're just dancing for you. And I never understood it, right? Because I always thought, what does that mean, dancing for someone else? Like, it never made any sense to me. Till one of my friends, who's still a very good friend of mine, when we went to a club, showed me. Actually said, look at those people. Look at them. They're not dancing for themselves. They're dancing because they feel they need to dance for whatever reason, whether it is because it would look weird if they were not dancing, or they feel that they have to impress someone while dancing. But honestly, I think, Steve and I talked about this yesterday, even if someone is trying, it's okay. Even if someone is trying to dance, even if it doesn't come naturally, I genuinely believe dancing is a way to be one with God. And when I dance, I am being one with God. That's why I rejoice that way, right? So today was very special for me. I was very happy. So thank you for bringing that up. I actually forgot about it. So
Thank you.
You sure?
Now I'm done. Yeah.
To go a little bit off of that with the dancing, so I was watching you dance, and part of me was like, man, I wish I could be that free, but also that went away real quick, because then I realized that you weren't completely dancing for yourself, because I didn't feel uncomfortable just watching you. And I think that really showed. It's just like, whoa, she's just kind of one with, like what you're saying, with God, and so just wanted to put that little tidbit in there. But also to go off of more of the love, and I did express this to you. We'll see if we can do it again, because I feel it's important to share. But I always kind of repeat in my mind, to be in love, to be with love, but then it always comes to be love. And you are a perfect representation of just what love is. Like, you're just being love, especially within that dance. You can see it, because I felt no discomfort, even though it's one thing that I'm working on and just expressing myself through dance. And so to go off of that, when we were in groups to share with people, the guy that I was sharing with, Scott, he, I don't know if I should have actually said his name out loud. There was two, right?
There were two, yeah.
The people on but he was saying that when you went over and touched him, your presence, your touch, your love reminded him of his mother. And then when you came over and put your hands on me, didn't necessarily, it was just, I felt like just a universal love kind of thing. And it was cool that love is morphed into so many things, and you're able to do that for so many people. So you morphed into his mother. You morphed into whatever I was feeling universally. And I'm sure anybody else that you've touched, you morph into what they visualize love to be. And it just showcases again that you are ultimately loved, because you are able to morph into it for other people. So,
oh my gosh.
So thank you.
Man, I'm so overwhelmed right now. Okay, has anybody cried on live TV in your podcast? Because today might be the first time. Wow, thank you. Thank you so much. This is, on the same account, I got similar feedback from someone else in the workshop as well, where he told me that he, when I went close to him and I sat next to him, he felt his father's presence, and his father had passed away a couple of years ago. So that was very powerful for me. He looked at me and he said, thank you. I don't know what it was, but I felt like when you were there, my father was there, So yeah, I it's such an honor. I had mentioned this before we started the breath journey, that I'm very honored to be in your presence, and I'm very honored when you allow me to be in your space, because I think it takes a lot of trust to allow someone in your space when you're going through something that vulnerable, that makes you that vulnerable, So it's such an honor. I was the person, that took me so long to feel connection with people, and now I'm having such deep connections within a couple of hours. So it's such a gift, like where I used to be and where I am now, So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you guys, and thank you for a beautiful day, and thanks for letting us share now. I'm curious, and this is maybe a question for myself, who's been new to this, as well as for maybe the XPAND listeners as well. What would your advice be for people who are just learning about Wim Hof, and how to take those first steps, and how to really, as they're listening to this and as they get excited about the experience everyone's sharing here, what would you recommend their first steps are?
Do you want to take that, or do you want me to do that? Yeah. So I always say that most of the time I meet three kinds of people at my workshops. The first are people who have got some sort of ailment or illness, where they're sick and tired of taking medication, and they are taking medication to get over the side effects of other medication, and they're just tired. They just don't want to take any medication anymore, and they just want to heal. So that's one type of person. The second type of person that comes in are people who are athletes. They are looking to take their athletic performance to the next level. And then the third, which are people who are genuinely looking to become healthier. Lately there is a term for this. They call them biohackers. It's becoming more and more in the know to use that term. But essentially, when you say biohacking, it involves so many different things. But breath and the cold exposure, in a way, the way I taught you with regards to the physiology and what's happening, the oxygen to carbon dioxide ratio, we're changing things by doing the breath. And so technically, yeah, in a way it is biohacking as well, right? So these are usually the three people that come to my workshops or the people that I come across. When I meet them, it's mainly the fear of ice. It's always, I want to do the method, but I am scared of the ice, or I don't want to do the cold showers, or it's too much. And I always tell them that you don't even have to do the cold right now. In fact, I did not. When I first started the method, I only did the breath work, right? And also the feeling of, oh, I don't know if this is going to make any sense if I only do the breath work. Is it good enough? Yes, it is. So right there, I would tell them that just try the breath work. And if you want to take it to the next level of trying to do it, then do it gradually. Start with cold showers, maybe lukewarm showers. If you were like me, I used to take showers that were 108 degrees Fahrenheit. So 75 degrees Fahrenheit for me was a big jump, right? So, you start off with taking a hot shower, and then at the end of the shower, you turn it down to make it cold. So you have a couple of seconds of the cold, and then you start building from there. So most of the time I've noticed that people who are intrigued by the method are apprehensive about the method primarily because of the cold part of it. The other, I know this sounds really interesting, but the other thing that I come across a lot is the fear of the breath. That also happens, right? Like, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm worried. I've seen these videos and I've seen people screaming and all of these funny things happening with the hands, and I don't know, it looks really crazy, like the devil's entered me or whatever. And reality is, when people say that, then I just say, there's no forcing. When you're ready, when you want to explore, when you want to experience it, I'm here. Just let me know. So most often than not, give it a couple of months and then they come around. My first workshop, which today I'm now doing workshops where I don't know more than 97 to 98% of the people who are attending my workshops. But when I first did my workshops, most of the people who came were people who actually saw the change in me. They saw, like the things I mentioned, the fact that all of the acne went away from my face, all of this stuff that they could see visually the changes that it was making in me, and also they were seeing the changes that it was making to different things that I was doing as well. And also I've become actually a very patient person. Not saying that I wasn't as patient before, and I've also calmed down a lot. It's very obvious to the people around me who have been around me. They really see the difference. I don't know, Steve, maybe you can say if that is right or not, because you've known me for quite a while now. But it was from the curiosity of that as well, of looking at me and seeing the change in me. So I always tell, and this includes all of you, because now all of you are Hoffers, that you are a walking, talking role model for the rest of the world. When people meet you and they look at you and they wonder, what is it that you're doing? It might not only be the Wim Hof method, it might be things to expand, it might be through other meditation techniques, but whatever makes you you is what people see. And when people look at you and they want to emulate what you have, then they will always ask you, what is it that you're doing, right? So that's why I always tell people, when you become a Hoffer, it's almost like you are carrying a torch now. You're carrying a torch to spread the message. I know you're very passionate about the healthcare system in the United States, right? And so I mentioned in the workshop that I come from a family of doctors. My brother is a doctor, my father is a doctor. And so I have a lot of respect for healthcare. I have a lot of respect for doctors. But I also think that as humans, we have incredible amount of power to be able to control our own physiology to a certain degree. And the ability for us to, instead of popping a pill or looking at the easy way out, to be able to make a little effort through methods like the Wim Hof method to be able to become happy, healthy, and strong. So that is really what I would say to, in fact, it wouldn't be saying, it would just be letting the actions speak more than the words. Most of the people who have come across me did not come to my workshops because of what I said to them about the method. It was when they saw me emulating what I'm emulating at the moment. Did I answer the question?
Yeah, that was good. Thank you.
Thank you. And excellent question. Feeling is understanding.
Mm.
One of my absolute favorite Wim Hof quotes and favorite quotes, period. Ultimately, it feels like many different practices boil down to feeling. The feeling of emotion, the feeling of subtle sensations, even the feeling of the people around us. There was a person during the breathing who started releasing emotional tears. And we are so bonded, we are so connected that I began to shed tears as well. And it was a shared with. Feeling is understanding. And we all have our own base of foundational awareness. And what's so fascinating, about the Wim Hof method is that it produces an opportunity for the Western world to feel the depth of meditation and the depth of internal focus through cold exposure almost instantaneously. We get this wild rush of data that we should probably hone and ground a little bit deeper in before we allow our mind to run wild with potentials. That is an ability that cross-transfers through every part of our life. A cold shower can help you harness that. Can you ground? Can you feel the pressure of water, cold water, against your skin, which is merely a fabric of existence? How are you judging this? Are you literally judging it before you touch it in fear? Are you trying to pull away and you've already created this imagery of what may be? Where are you able to move from and with? So the Wim Hof Method people who are beginning this journey, please know that that beauty of depth is possible. And we all have our own foundation. And our foundations begin wherever they should begin. I was very fortunate to meditate and do martial arts for many years before this method. That provided me with a foundation to approach this method that seemed to interweave and bond and flow through other modalities. The Wim Hof method seems to have wisdom so deeply embedded inside of it that it is able to cross-transfer useful data into other parts of our life. So, people just beginning, breathe. For real. Elongate that exhale. Feel what's going on. Breathe. Be present. Comprehend what's going on. You don't have to understand it fully, but comprehend the beauty and the complexity of our body's survival mechanisms, allowing us to be functioning even during potentially life-threatening moments. Perspective seems to be one of the most important things that we can build and harness. How do we handle the cold? How do we handle emotions? How do we handle the passing of loved ones? This is a way of being that is so deeply accessible through this method. Especially when you get in that cold water. The real parts of you show up. The freaking deeper parts of who we are show up. Who are we? If we don't comprehend our foundation, how will we ever be able to grow properly and efficiently and substantially? That would be my response for that.
See, I told you he should have answered it.
You helped build it. For real. The data, the info you shared, just like you were saying this whole day, no agenda, be present, feel, flow. Your ability to produce what you shared opened up a way for me to be where I should be within the expression. That's the power and beauty of being genuine when you answer something. If your data was skewed and unauthentic, it would have created a legitimately different response through this person. We're so fucking connected. And we felt this today.
Yeah, I definitely felt it. Definitely felt it. It was a very beautiful workshop. You know, I never I look at the pictures and I realize how many of us were there. But it didn't feel like it. It just felt like such a small, intimate group, you know? I connected with almost every one of you. You know, whether it was after the workshop, during the workshop, when I did, like, just, it was so, when I look at the pictures, I keep thinking, man, there's quite a few people there today, you know? And it felt like a little small family gathering, you know? And so it was pretty awesome, especially the last bit when we got to walk over the bridge, you know? My little pseudo bridge. That, you know, that for me was, I was actually emulating what we did in Poland. Remember I told you all, you know, we had this whole thing where we could walk barefoot and we held hands. There was a bridge we had to cross before we got to that point where we had to jump off. So that bridge that we crossed was a little, I mean, what are the chances of having a bridge in the middle of a gym? You know, only in Boise. At Element Athletics, people, if you're looking for a bridge,
That is funny.
just go to Element Athletics.
Well, to begin to wrap this up a little bit, thank you, everybody here, everybody present. Thank you for freaking coming to Boise.
Thank you, Shereen. Thank you. I really, wow, man, it's been one hell of a year, you know, and I feel like it's just getting better by the second. So, you know, it was 5 months ago that we met, and here we are. We actually talked about doing something like this 5 months ago, and we actually made it happen. So I'm really grateful for your friendship, and I'm really excited to come back to Boise in the future, grow this community here, stay in touch with all of you. You know, like I said, I was telling Maris, I love social media, you know. I have friends everywhere now, and we're connected and get to know what's going on in each other's lives, and I'm very grateful for social media. So, yeah, I can't wait to see all of you again.
Does anybody have any remaining words to share?
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Until next time.